Hello again, guys. Right now with this seminar, we're going to be looking at not just your practitioners, but how to actually refer to those practitioners in your writing, so in the written exams. Okay, the best ways and some examples of how I have done that and how I expect that you guys will do that. Okay, so let's just go for the overview of our practitioners. We have Konstantin Stanislavski, Stella Adler, Robert Lepage, Bertolt Brecht, and I'm going to show you examples of referring to each of these practitioners with similar questions, okay, or similar foundations. Referring to approaches, let's look at the first one. So this is looking at Robert Lepage, which we know as a designer, so it's going to be design based. So you are taking on the role of a sonographer, all right? What I've presented here is over this side is a practice example that incorporates decision and reason. So in section 1, this would be part of your decision and reason. If you always, find it difficult to, kind of separate the two, then just keep them together, decision and reason. Even in the section 2 structure, just keep them together if you're otherwise unsure of how to separate those. So Robert Lepage, I would utilize Robert Lepage's approach of metamorphosis sonography by incorporating the principle of design, rhythm, movement. By placing a rotating, iconic Australian hills hoist centre stage, and having it turn repeatedly throughout the scene, progressively increasing in pace and severity, I will create a dynamic stage space. Okay? So, I've mentioned my creative choices. That's the hills hoist, the iconic Australian hills hoist, so it appeals to context as well. I've mentioned my practitioner approach, which is metamorphosis sonography, and that creating a dynamic stage space. And I've mentioned that linkage because the hills hoist turns, it's moving. Okay, so the hills hoist moving means that I can then say that I'm using the approaches of Robert Lepage to build on and develop that creative choice. Okay, so here's one of them. Let's look at Konstantin Stanislavski now. So Konstantin Stanislavski, actor. Okay, in my rehearsal process, I would use Konstantin Stanislavski's circle of attention in order to highlight my psychological actions and intention. I would clearly identify when my character would engage their intimate space and their public space and corresponding energy. I would rehearse and refine the transformation between the intimate circle, where I would demonstrate first circle energy by isolating my character, and my public circle, where I would further develop my relationships with other characters. Now, this is quite broad, okay? So this would do well in a reasoning section, but the decision is all about specific choices. So, this isn't perfect. Don't take this as near perfect. Take this as an example of how I relate to Stanislavski's approach. Now, I mentioned Konstantin Stanislavski's approach of circles of attention. I link it to the idea that it is in my rehearsal process. And then I make specific choices. Take that back. I make choices, okay? The choices are that I'm going to refine how I am projecting first circle energy, intimate energy in my first circle, and the transformation between that first circle and my other circles, so my second and third circle, where I'm connecting with characters, okay? The quotes at the bottom I've presented there as an idea of what you might present in your justification or your evidence section. The actor does not live, he plays, and that can tie into your rehearsal process. You are playing with the transformation. That's what you would be doing. You are playing with the transformation between those circles. Stella Adler, okay, a really, really good one, a really great one to tackle in many different contexts for rehearsal performance specifically. I would utilize Stella Adler's approach of collective consciousness, creative imagination, to enhance my use of space and establish clear and meaningful proxemics. By attaching specific character memories that evoke happiness and joy to upstage right, when I approach this space, it will symbolize the construction of positive relationships and create a comforting mood. By attaching negative and scarring memories to downstage left, the objects placed there, moving to this space will symbolize a disconnection and breakdown of relationships that increase dramatic tension. Now, although I've been quite vague, what I've done well is I have approached referring to Stella Adler. Okay, so I've mentioned Stella Adler and I've talked about her approach. I've also inferred how that will benefit. It will benefit the establishment of relationships and proxemics, so my relationships with not just people, but objects as well. What this could do better is when I say by attaching specific character memories that evoke happiness and joy to upstage right, well, what in upstage right? It's not just about attaching memories to a space, to a square, to where, well, upstage right doesn't exist in the representational world, does it? It's actually a space in a room. I would then need to identify what object am I placing that on? I am placing that on the television in which we've watched wonderful amounts of reruns of Friends, or a particular show, or a photograph, or a bedside table, or maybe an ornament that lies there that I can remember buying with my with my wife, or my counterpart, or one of the characters in the play. Okay, so attaching them to clear memories. That's a really good one. And lastly, Bertolt Brecht. So again, don't need to know about this, or don't need to worry about this until Unit 2 comes along in second semester. But here's an example anyway. I would address the audience directly, employing Bertolt Brecht's Verfremdungseffekt, parentheses V effect, approach to create aesthetic distance between the performance and the audience. Addressing the audience would shatter the fourth wall, breaking down the audience suspension of disbelief, and forcing them to adopt an attitude of inquiry and criticism. Okay, and then my quote is quite relative. Art is not a mirror held up to reality, but a hammer with which to shape it. Okay, which is a really, really good one, and it ties into so many of Brecht's approaches of, art is not something that we are supposed to use as a way of reflecting representational visions upon our audiences and society. Rather, we are presenting the things that are wrong with it, the things that need to be changed, the things that society has built up as important when they're not important, or vice versa. But that written approach addresses Bertolt Brecht, his approach of the Verfremdungseffekt. It actually defines a little bit, okay? So I say I will address the audience, that's part of what that is, but to create distance between the performance and audience is really what it's about, okay? Addressing the audience would shatter the fourth wall. I'm using lots of drama terminology and academic language as well in there. So it's quite encompassing, this response, although very small, right? So it's quite small. So you would go into more specifics. How would you specifically create the Verfremdungseffekt? What would you specifically do as an actor? Would be how I increase this, how I improve this, okay? Whether it is addressing the audience, stepping out of the performance space and into the audience space, whether it be making direct eye contact with the audience members and referring to them by name, whether it would be pulling an audience member onto the stage. They're more specific creative choices than what I've listed here. That's how you would improve. Here's our two responses, okay? In section 1, this is how I've wanted you, section 1, this is how I've asked you to respond. A 3-tiered graphic organizer: decision and reason, justification, audience response, okay? In section 2, decision, reason, evidence, audience response, and ram at home, making it your own, enveloping, embellishing rather, okay? In section 1, those kinds of answers, decision and reason, that's where they belong, okay? That's where they belong. And then those quotes that I supplied at the bottom, that would go in justification with a small context line, okay? In decision and reason, it's all about what are you specifically doing? That's the decision. What are the specific choices that you are making? Decision. The reason is how that relates to the text, the author's, the playwright's intentions, and your practitioner approach. In section 2, it's either in decision or reason, okay? Now, you can link these two up. You don't need to separate these, okay? Again, you might do you might evoke a similar approach. That's the wrong terminology. You might undergo a similar approach to section 1 response structure where you link decision and reason, okay? But again, decision's all about specific choices that you make as an actor or a designer. And the reason is about why that's important. Why does that matter? Why is that a good approach? Why are they prominent, prevalent, creative choices? Okay? Then the evidence is with the link, the quote. Okay? Your turn. All right? What I would like you to do is I would like you to approach this question up here using Stella Adler. Okay? So any approach of Stella Adler's, I want you to think about what the best core or key approach is of Stella Adler's and use it, okay, to answer this question. Character selected, use it from speaking in tongues, Pete or Jane, okay? In rehearsal, outline activities you will engage in to develop the non-verbal aspect time in your physical approach to your character, okay? Dot points I've got there. Imagine the unseen text is speaking in tongues. Respond using our short answer structure. Remember, outline for 4 marks doesn't need a great deal, okay? So keep it confined, keep it concise, whilst appealing to all of those wonderful things that need to be in that response structure. Okay, pause it now and give it your best shot. Go. Awesome. Compare it with my example. Now, I know I said to keep it concise. This is probably too much for that structure, but I timed myself for this to make sure that I stuck within what would be considered a 5-minute answer, something that you can smash out really quick. Okay, so my decision and reason. As an actor, interpreting the role of Pete, that's how we start. I would utilize the approaches of Stella Adler in rehearsal in order to develop the non-verbal aspect time, a rewording of the question. So I just reword and answer the question in my first sentence. I would complete a deconstruction activity that identified my character's beats, actions, and objectives in the play, activity 1. This approach is considered script interpretation, practitioner approach. I'm ticking lots of boxes here. And aligns to Adler's belief of appealing to the playwright's intentions. I'm showing I know a bit more than I'm writing, okay? So I'm not having to explore Adler too much, but I'm showing that I know Adler to a specific degree. She loves the playwright's intentions. She's a passionate being, and I'm showing that I'm passionate. I would also complete a linear extraction that recognized the line's weight in the play and the role they have in developing my physical approach, another activity. These would result in, and then I've highlighted time, sustained, slow, and enduring and sedated internal and external action. So I've made a specific choice. The specific choice is quite small and minimal in comparison to the reason, but it all kind of ties in together. You can see how it kind of flows together. Justification is, now I've made this completely up. I don't know the text as well as you guys have kind of learned those lines, but learn them within the context of at the conclusion of part 1 of your script. But here we have Pete moves slowly towards Jane. And then I've given, that's the quote from the text. It's a stage direction. And then my context line is stage directions that dictate slow and sustained time. So that is enforcing and reinforcing my decisions that I've made. And the audience response. These activities will empower my role in the play and create a more realistic representational mood that builds dramatic tension. My physical approach and utilization of time will cater more to the playwright's intentions, present accurate and engaging symbols for the audience to enjoy. So I've used essentially 8 really, really strong drama terms to help build that audience response. But primary focus of that audience response is to say, how are you building a realistic representational projection or performance? Okay? Compare yours to this one here, so pause if you need to, but compare what you guys were able to create with this one here. What have you done well? What have you missed? What have I missed? What do you think you've done better? And I would love to hear those as well, and compare these to what you've got there. But make sure that you don't embellish too much. These are supposed to be completed with time in mind, and great time management will go much, much further than embellishing an answer like this that's only worth 4 marks. Okay, that's all for this one, guys. Hopefully it's alleviated some of your stresses. If it hasn't, then I apologize, and I will continue to try and create some videos that help you guys understand exactly what you need to understand to do really well in the exam, because I want you to do well, and I know that you guys can do well. Otherwise, that's it for now, and I'll catch you guys at school. Thanks.